freedom. You learn so much from your preceptors, but it is really nice. And even if you're with the nicest preceptor on earth, you always feel like you're being judged, even if you're not. And so it is really nice to finally just do your own thing and not be like, oh, I wonder if, if they thought I did okay, like that looked pretty good. I wonder if they saw that. Oh, man, I did something stupid. Dang it. Like I don't normally do that, but they saw it. I think just that self-talk being gone is really nice.
Yes.
And not having to do anything after the hospital. You're just home, and it does get better, guys. If you're at school, it really does. It's so worth it. I have some free time now. I'm able to see friends again. I'm able to watch TV again. Like it really is. It's a great career. The hospital I work with is awesome. The CRNAs I work with is awesome. So it's a really exciting time.
All right, welcome back everyone to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy. I'm your host, Jenny Fennell, CRNA. And today we're going to talk about what is life like after CRNA school. And today we have a really special guest, Marissa. Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you?
So for those of you who don't know Marissa, you may know her if you've been a part of the Academy. She has been around. We were just discussing before we went live from the beginning, really. She is an avid mentor, and she mentors on Instagram and different, her blog. And so Sassy Anesthesia, if you don't follow her, make sure you check her out. And so again, she caught my attention early on because I was like, I really loved her style, loved what she did. And I could tell she was passionate about helping others equally, not only become a really strong ICU nurse, but during her time as an RRNA, she was mentoring during the entire time that she was in school. And so she recently graduated. So we're bringing her on the show to kind of discuss her journey. Other things about Marissa that I think you should know is that she was also providing mentorship for our Academy students by doing resume edits, which I am so incredibly grateful for. She is also a new CRNA, and she has joined the Arizona PR, or State Association of Nurse Anesthesiology PR committee, which kudos to you for graduating and jumping right into the state association. I think that's amazing, which we'll touch on a little bit too, I think later, for those people listening who are getting ready to graduate and are like, how did you do that? What do I need to do to get involved and things of that nature? So welcome. I'm so happy to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here. It's been a long journey. I've known Jenny since literally right from the very beginning, and it's crazy to have stayed in contact with you right when I got accepted into school. And now we're here talking about life after graduation.
I think it's fun. I think that's like one of the most rewarding aspects of what I do, is really getting to follow people's journeys. But I think everyone's probably wondering, what was your journey like in the beginning? And how did you know CRNA was the career path that you decided to take?
Yeah. So I knew I wanted to become a CRNA when I was about 13 years old, actually. So it wasn't something that came to me later on in life. I knew in high school that I wanted to be a CRNA. I went on a medical mission trip to Honduras, actually. And, I wasn't much of anything to help at that point. I just kind of shadowed because I wasn't even a nurse at the time. I was young. And so I was able to kind of go and shadow in the operating room and labor and delivery and optometry, dentistry, everywhere. And my parents brought me along because I thought it would be kind of helpful for me to see, if I fell in love with anything there. And, I found myself in the OR, and, while everybody was, very focused in on the surgery itself, I kind of found myself wandering to the head of the bed, and it literally is history from that point. I just fell in love with it immediately. I went back the next year and shadowed the anesthesiologist again, and I just knew I wanted to go into anesthesia.
Love that. And I want to emphasize to everyone listening that you mentioned a couple of key things. One, the exposure, which I think not everyone gets that opportunity. I know, like for me, I never would even have thought about a mission trip in high school, but one other key aspect that I think is available to everyone, and it's very easy to access, especially early on in nursing school, is shadowing. As a nursing student, that is one of the easiest and best ways to really get your foot in the door, is to confide in a clinical coordinator during nursing school that you want to explore the operating room, and make it a point to try to get in early and gravitate towards the head of the bed. You don't have to say, I'm going to shadow a CRNA. You can just simply say, I would like some time in the operating room, and just to kind of see what the CRNA does. So keep that in the back pocket for those of you listening to this episode early on. I think that's a really great way to solidify your passion and your desire, because correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like it kind of lit a fire in you to make this happen for yourself.
Yeah, for sure. Both of my parents were in the medical field. My mom was a nurse and my dad was a respiratory therapist and then pacemaker rep at the time. And so they had both kind of guided me in the way of nurse anesthesia versus going the medical school route. And so that was the only reason, I think maybe because my mom had the nursing background, that I did decide to go with that direction. I did go back and forth between medical school and nursing school, but I'm very glad that I chose the nursing school route for sure.
Awesome. Well, first of all, congratulations on your graduation. Whoop,
Thank
whoop.
you.
That's so exciting.
I know.
So I'm sure our listeners are like, okay, let's get into the juice, let's hear, all of the things. We're going to kind of really focus this episode, you guys, on kind of the end of school. I know there was so much in between that I'm sure we would love to address on another episode. But we're really going to focus on helping those who are kind of gearing up to the end of their journey, because I know that kind of creates kind of a lot of unknowns and uncertainties and maybe questions. And I would love to know, kind of start with, did you find it hard to focus towards the end of your clinicals or academic time in school?
Yes, absolutely.
The senioritis
Yeah,
kicked in.
yes, absolutely. I think you're just going so hard for so long that just near the end of it, you really start to get burnt out. And that's normal. And anyone who says that they haven't gotten burnt out is just lying, because it's hard and it's a long journey, and you're excited to get started and be on your own. And it's almost there, but not quite. And so it is really hard to kind of stay focused. But definitely lean on your classmates and stuff like that. The last, I think even like the last 6 months of clinical is where it really starts to kick in or set in, hopefully, that you're about to be on your own. And maybe that depends, and that's a totally separate conversation on whether or not you decide to go independent or whether you go practice in an ACT model, et cetera. I knew I was going to start working at an independent CRNA owned company. And so for me, it really put the pressure on, is that you are not going to have, obviously there are CRNAs around to help you, but sometimes there's not. And sometimes you are the only anesthesia provider in that hospital, in that outpatient center, which is where I work now. So really making sure that you use the last few months of your clinical to soak up every bit of piece of information that you can, because you're going to be on your own soon and people are going to be looking at you for answers, and you're the only one that can provide them sometimes. So it's scary.
Right. Yeah, no, I love that. And I love the fact that you knew that going into your senior year. So did you seek out like different opportunities that you may have otherwise not? Like, did you try to challenge yourself by putting yourself in the harder cases, or getting cases that maybe you had lower numbers on? Or how did you work towards making sure you felt comfortable at graduation that you could go out into independent practice?
Right. I think what was nice is that I decided to sign with the last clinical rotation that I had. So that in itself was very helpful, that I already kind of knew what it was going to look like when I was independent. The CRNAs there all knew me. And so they would kind of help a little bit, and they would stand back for induction. They'd kind of hide behind a door to make it seem like, like you really are on your own. And you want to start feeling like you're practicing independent. With that, I almost had to lie to myself. And I think that's kind of a good way to practice, is that tell yourself that your preceptor isn't in the room, even if their preceptor is in the room. Like, okay, he's not right there, she's not right there. What would you do if this happened right now? What would you do if she hadn't stepped in for that spinal? What would you have said to that patient? If you couldn't get that spinal, would you have done this, et cetera? And so, because the mindset really does change once you're on your own and nobody else in that room can help you. It's a trip, but it's been good so far.
Awesome. I love that. And I love the fact that you said kind of challenge yourself to act like your preceptor's not in the room. And, I think it's hard, depending on where you get to rotate through your time as a student or as an RRNA, you may or may not have as much autonomy. And what I mean by that is you may or may not have, like, the CRNAs involved with you may be a little more meaning hands-on, and that could just be that site, right? Or particular people. Yes. But then you're going to rotate through sites where you're going to notice the culture's a little different, the environment's different, and they may just be like, yeah, you got it. Good. I'm going to sit over here. You call me if you need anything. Yes. And so it can be really, really vastly different. But what I challenge you, because I know, like, for me, I was at a site that was very heavily kind of overseen, right? Like, we didn't really have too many opportunities to be by ourselves. And I was there for almost 12 months of my 24-month training. So it was a lot of my training. And I remember feeling like, gosh, I just want to know I can do this on my own. And for those of you who are experiencing the same kind of frustration, I remember thinking when I graduated, I don't know if I'm going to know when to extubate someone safely, because I've always kind of had someone to kind of say, you're good, you know? And I remember being like, dang it, I wish I wouldn't have like been so reliant on that as a student. But what I can say to you that I remember, like when I first started, I was like, oh no, am I really ready? Am I really going to be able to make that judgment call? And you're ready. You're ready. Yes, you can. But I do think, like Marissa said, is to really challenge yourself to think, if I had no one else in this room, would I make this call? And a lot of times, like I'll have students that I work with look up to me. They don't even have to say anything, but they look to me and I almost look away because I'm like, I know they're looking for a confirmation eyeball look. Like I know it. And so a lot of times with my students, especially that are seniors that are asking me questions, I kind of throw it back at them. Like, what do you think? And not in a way that's like aggressive or mean, but like, just because I want them to think through it, because it's really going to help them, because I'm not always going to be there. Or I just say them, like when they're going to extubate and they ask me, I say, well, if you think it's safe, it's your call. And I don't know if they like that answer, but like I do that again, not to be mean, but I want them to make the decision. And of course, if I truly thought something was unsafe, I would stop it, but I want to see them struggle with a spasm. If we get a little spasm, okay, well, because it's going to happen. So it might as well happen when I'm here and I can be that second set of hands to tell you exactly what are your next steps now to break that. You know, so I love all that advice. And I love the fact that you got an independent practice where you rotated. I have known students to seek out independent practice where they don't rotate, or they seek it out in a way where they ask their program to potentially rotate there, even if it's not in the set rotation, because some schools have like 16 clinical sites, right? And you maybe get put at 4 and you're like, but I really want to get this one site that I didn't get selected to go to. Ask. You never know. They could rotate people around or switch you around. Other schools don't have that many sites. And so you're kind of set what you're set with, which was my experience. But you know, you don't just kind of know what you're going into as far as what are the options. I even know I worked at a place, my first job at a school, same program that I went to, but different cohort, meaning like we had students in Toledo, Ohio, Akron, Ohio, Cincinnati, and Dayton, and then Columbus. So we had like city cohorts within the state of Ohio. Well, the students who were in the same program for CRNA school that were in the Toledo cohort, whatever you want to call it, had a different clinical experience. And what was unique about that experience was that they did this all the time. The last 3 months of their clinical rotation, the student coordinator would go to the student and say, what do you need? What do you want more experience with? They maybe get a second open heart rotation or a second OB rotation or whatever it is, peds, whatever they felt they were rusty on. They now had the last 3 months to spend more time doing it, which I thought was really cool. And I'm like, I wish I would have had that opportunity as a student, but that just goes to show that I didn't know to ask, and maybe I could have, but not all sites do peds or OB. So again, it's kind of the luck of the draw, but no, it's an option.
Right. For sure. Yeah, definitely take advantage.
So you said it was hard to stay focused on the last 6 months, you know, you're burnout. And I guess I want to point on that too, that, you know, I know when you have a new student, because they have a sparkle in their eye, like they're all excited, you know, and typically seniors, like you can tell they're just like, hard for them to muster even a smile, you know, and they're just like, oh, like I have a lot of compassion, because part of me is like, I know they try so hard and they're putting a lot of effort, and I know they're like, oh, I'll stay and finish this case, but I'm like, you know what, you need to get out of here, because at a certain point is, you know, depending on what is going on, do you really need to pull more LMA? I mean, you could. I'm not saying that that's probably not the right attitude that I think some preceptors would take, but the same token, if it's 4 o'clock and you have a senior student, I'm usually like, get out of here. Like, you don't need to pull LMA. Like, I trust you. I've seen you perform, like, you're okay. So know that, don't, because I have students who say no. I have students who are like, no, I'll stay. And I think that's a mistake. I mean, personally, because if your CRNA told you to go, they're not testing you. I mean, maybe they are. I guess you might know them better than I do personally, but like, they might just be trying to be nice, right? And be like, I remember what it was like to be a student. You're not paid. I know. And I literally times when I tell my student, I say to go, and you can always confirm this with them too. I always say, I know you can do this. I know you don't need the skill because I've seen it done and you've done it very well. Go ahead and get out of here, you know, even if it's a half hour early. And sometimes if I don't say that, what you can say back to your preceptors, you can say, well, do you think I should stay here to work on my skills? Do you think I would find value in staying to the end of this case? They'll say yes or no. That's a black and white question. So, and if they say no, then just thank them and go. What do you think about that?
I agree with you. I will say, I think some preceptors are doing that to test. I don't know. That's just my experience, but I'll never know at the end of the day. I think it also depends on where you are in your rotations. Is it your first rotation? Is it your last rotation?
100%.
Like you said, I think you kind of know, but again, I don't know if maybe all students do recognize that maybe they do need more experience. So there's something to be said for that as well. But, I tried my best to stay. All of my rotations were pretty heavy. And I know not everybody some people have really light rotations. Some people have heavy. Mine were always 5 days a week. And I was there at least until like 4 or 5 p.m. every single day. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people sometimes don't have that. Some people have more, some people have less. But that was kind of my schedule. So I felt like it was decently heavy all the time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So near the end, I did get pretty tired. Heavy. But I think you're just kind of you're tired the whole way through, but I think near the end, the senioritis is more of just like, you want to be done and that you want to study for boards. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of where the anxiety is starting to kind of kick in. And that in combination with feeling like you're going to be independent soon is just a lot of more anxiety senioritis than just celebratory senioritis.
Yes.
in a way.
100%. And I like that advice too. And I'm not obviously 100% don't recommend ever asking to leave. Please don't ever do that. Like, hear me out. Don't ever ask to leave because you got a test to study for. Like, that would get you on the bad list pretty quickly. But, and you're right. Some environments, and I think kind of what you need to do to kind of navigate that, because sometimes it's unknown, is to talk to other students who've been to that rotation.
Yeah.
They will be able to tell you, this environment is like, you better make sure you stay to finish your day or else. Or they might say, they're pretty laid back here. Like, they'll let you go early if there's something going on, or if it's early, like maybe, go hang out for a little bit, offer some breaks. And if you've done that, then they're going to give you their blessing, you get out of there, whatever. Talk to current students and kind of figure out. And I'm always a big proponent, even as a CRNA, I do this. Before I leave for the day, I check on my coworkers. If there's someone who I know has been stuck in a room, I offer them a bathroom break. That is just the courteous way to be. And I'm not saying as a student, but I'm just saying, keep that in mind, because you're getting ready to graduate, and like, I scratch your back, you scratch mine. Truly comes in big circle around, right? Yes, and if you're a team player, people will help you out too. And trust me, you will know the people that are not team players very quickly. And you don't want that to be you. So just a good habit to make. But as a senior, I think it's hard because, like Marissa stated, you want to study and you're like, oh, I gotta, you're stuck in clinical all day. You have all this stuff else you have to do. You also have a potential something else you want to do for yourself, like go to the gym or see your family or whatever it is. And you're kind of underneath this pressure, and you're watching the clock. And so be careful, because I think sometimes it can give the wrong taste in the preceptor's point of view, that you're just not passionate about it, or you don't care, you're not present, you're not doing a good job. I have had students who get to their senior year who kind of don't do any pre-op anymore. They skip pre-op altogether, and that's like a big no-no. And here's another thing too. You will see CRNAs do this. I'm not saying this is right, and I know not an independent practice more than likely, but I've worked a lot of ACT models, and a lot of times we really do rely heavily on the attending to the pre-op, because the room turnover is so quick that you don't always have time to make it to pre-op your next patient. You should always try. You should always try. Sometimes it's like literally walking the hallway as you're walking back to the room, right? But that being said, I've seen students adapt the same kind of, should I even dare to say, laziness that some CRNAs can adapt. And that's always going to play negatively in your favor. And remember, your time in clinical is a job interview. And so, it's so true. And not even just for that facility, for the entire state, maybe even for the entire country, because the first thing a chief CRNA will say is, who knows so-and-so? And you better believe they know someone who knows someone who knows someone.
Somebody knows you.
Yeah. It's a small community.
Yes.
Not to stress you out, and I hope that it wasn't my intent, but I guess I want to at least put the warning out there.
No, people should know that. I think some people forget how small this community is, and they're not aware of that. Everybody knows everybody. And maybe I felt like that a little bit more since my social media, but everybody does know everybody.
Oh, I can go to social media and they're whole
yeah, it's a whole other podcast.
Yeah. Well, and that's just the thing too, and just a little blurb on this, because it can be very dangerous. Posting your journey is great. And that's a mentorship, right? And I get it. Like, you have a passion to let people see your journey so they can hopefully follow in your footsteps. I think that's a very, again, that's a great thing to do, but be so careful especially when you post pictures of the inside a real operating room. Okay, simulation lab, no big deal. Like there's no HIPAA violations with that. You can picture the dummy, take a picture of his nostrils and post his name. That's totally fine. Like the mannequin, like no one's going to care. But I see all the time, it takes one small mistake.
Yes.
And if I'm speaking perfectly honest, I have made that mistake and it backlashed on me big time. And it takes one small, nonchalant, slight oversight on your part to post something that can get you in a whole heap of trouble, get you kicked out of the program.
Right.
And so it's not worth it. It's not worth it. So post, study pictures, sim lab pictures, be so careful about posting operating room pictures.
Yeah.
I don't know if you even notice, I don't do anything on my social media anymore in real operating rooms because it's just not worth the risk. I love my job. Agreed. I want to keep it. Right. And so,
yes,
that's just an over, and then also be careful what you post too, as far as like, grotesque pictures. I mean, I don't know. I've seen all kinds of stuff where I'm like, I don't know who's looking at that, but like, I don't know. I mean, just be thoughtful of who might be coming to your profile to visit. And from what I've been told by program faculty is they do tend to scope out your profile when they interview you. So if they go in there and see a whole bunch of pictures, they're like, I don't know if this is the best representation of our profession or just humanity. I don't know. Just be careful. That's all. I'm going to leave that there.
Your school. I mean, for anyone that's listening, your school is looking at your profile if it's private, and even if it's not, if your friends, and this isn't just coming from me because my social media has a following. I'm saying for even people that you're just friends and family only, it doesn't matter. You just need to be friends with like one person in your class that maybe doesn't like that photo that you took at certain time of the day, whatever, and they can send that to your program director. That didn't happen to me, but I'm just saying it can happen. So just keep your social media very pure.
Yeah. And don't mention your school's name. That's another big one too. Yep. It's always best to leave that out. Even like when I bring students in the podcast now, if we're using their name, we're either asking permission or we're not mentioning schools. We're not even saying, sometimes we use fake names because I want to protect them, right? I don't want them to get in trouble. Yeah. And schools all tend to have a social media policy. But anyways, we're getting totally off track, but sorry about that. But I think it's still worth hearing, especially towards as senior approaches, because your potential future employees could then be looking you up on Instagram. So
they are.
So let's get into board prep. I'm sure people who are approaching the near end are like, oh no, how do I make this work? And everyone's fear is to not pass. But the reality is too, you guys, let me just on a positive note, it's very unlikely if you've worked hard and done well in your courses in CRNA school that you are not going to pass. But let's get into, I have seen students make a huge mistake, which we'll address, but let's go ahead and get into like, what was your typical routine? What was your study plan? How many hours, that type of thing?
Sure. So I guess bouncing off of how burnt out I was. So I was pretty burnt out. So I knew that I wanted to take boards very early. In fact, I ended up taking boards the day before I graduated, which I know is not very.
My jaw just dropped.
The big risk there. Yeah. And some people don't even get that opportunity because it really is last minute on when you get your approval to test. So some people, depending on how quickly your school submits all the forms, once you've completed all your clinical, completed absolutely everything that's required for your transcripts, then your school can then proceed to check you off basically to test for boards. And so I got my approval to test maybe a day or two, maybe it was a week. I don't remember. It was a very short time span. So I had made up my mind already on when I wanted to test because you get it kind of last minute. It was the week of graduation, I believe. So I was studying as if I was going to take boards the day before graduation, not knowing if I was even going to get that test date. So what my school did is if you got greater than a 450 on your C score, the second time around, we got our last week of clinical off, which was awesome. So I was able to do that for the C. So I got that last week off. So I had about 2 straight weeks that I studied for boards nonstop, and that was it. We used Apex throughout our program. I was not the biggest fan of Apex, and I know a lot of people don't agree with me on that, and that's fine. What you guys need to know is what works for you. Apex, for whatever reason, it just didn't completely register well for me. It was a little bit of too much information overload. I felt the questions were extremely difficult. And boards is difficult. So don't get me wrong there. So maybe that's kind of how they're trying to prep you in that regard. But I used about 50% Apex and 50% Prodigy. And I know Prodigy is an older program, but I kind of liked that it was almost like anesthesia for dummies in a way. It kind of like really simplified things for me in a way that I understood. But at the end of the day, when it's you studying for boards, you know how you study well. So if Apex works for you, don't use Prodigy. If Apex doesn't work for you, find something that's not Apex. That's all you need to know. There's no right or wrong way to do this. I did it. I think I was maybe one of the only people in my class that did it that way. Most of my class did Apex. So if Apex worked for you, use it. It just wasn't my favorite. That's all. But yeah, so it was about 2 weeks and it was nonstop sitting. I took maybe a half day off in between that. I'm somebody that I don't like to draw things out. I don't enjoy studying. I like to get it done. I don't want to draw it out. And so it was about 2 weeks. I was up maybe at 6 a.m. and I would study until maybe about 9 p.m. And it was just studying.
Did you take a gym break or anything in the middle, or just?
I would go on like a walk around the block.
Oh, wow.
And then I'd have like a lunch break. And then that was kind of it. But that was me. And I knew that was how I studied. And I know a lot of people aren't like that. I do know people that are like that though.
Yeah.
So it's like when you go into your study hole, you go into your study hole and then you walk out of it. And so that's how I
walk out with like, some
trauma,
unibrow and a mustache and hairy armpits. You're like, I'm back.
Yeah. And so that was how I studied. I made my own study guide. I think that kind of helped. I did a lot of my own drawings on my iPad. What worked for me is I kind of liked pulling from a bunch of different resources and putting it into a few pieces of paper. And so what I did is that whenever I would find a really heavy topic on Apex, and it was also heavy on Prodigy, it was also heavy in our lectures in school, maybe a year prior, and they're like, this is on boards, like red star. I knew it was important. And so I would put everything that was completely that I had to know, like local anesthetic maxes or that kind of stuff. Like, it's just going to be on boards that you got to know. It was on 2 pieces of paper on my iPad. And so what I would do is I would brain dump everything. And it was full of information. It was a horrible 2 pieces of paper. Like it was just packed with writing, but I would brain dump it every couple of days. And so if I knew I got a question related to that topic and I blanked out, I didn't want to just have to rely on it from memory. I wanted to be able to visually see it, and I could see where it was on that piece of paper. Okay, it was in the middle, and it was on the left side. It was underneath the, that flow volume loop that I drew out. Okay, that's what it was. That's the answer. So it was so familiar for me. So that was kind of how I studied.
So you must have like a little bit of a visual memory then too.
Definitely visual. Yeah. Okay. And so they do give you a piece of paper and boards, or it was like a whiteboard. And so right off the bat, once I clicked start on my board exam, I did write down a few things. I think everybody does that. Maybe not everybody, but I did.
Yeah, no, I did too. I wrote down I had like you said, kind of some concepts, especially ones that were trickier and harder, that if you got questioned around it, you want to be able to like kind of think through a little bit. Yes. Whatever you had. Yeah. And good job on your C, because I'm pretty sure the average is like more like 420-ish. I think even am I wrong about that? Am I remembering correctly? Or maybe you had to get
I know a lot of schools want you to get around 450. Oh. And so I think I ended up getting,
in my day. I don't remember. I remember I remember my goal was to get above a 420. So things have probably changed since like then. But.
Yeah, I think a little, well, and I think it depends on your school, but 450 was, I think, the goal, at least for now. Gotcha. And so on my second one, I ended up getting, I think it was like a 493. I was pretty shocked, but it ended up.
I don't remember that anymore, because that sounds great. That's great. So that's good to know. And
just because I'm thinking about that, I think this is something a lot of people in my class didn't do necessarily. Take your C's seriously. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people the first time around, they go in it, well, I just want to see where I'm at. Yes. And it depends on your school. And then what that does is it causes so much stress for the second C that does matter. And you want to know that you're going to get a 450 or 430, whatever your school requires. You want to know that you get that. So you're not walking into boards being like, well, crap, I only got,
Right.
415, am I going to pass? No,
Yes.
I knew that because I got greater than a 450, I think if you get greater than a 450, it shows that you have like a 90th percentile, 95. Don't quote me on that, but it's around at least like a 90% chance that you are going to pass boards on the first try, which is why they use that number. So you want to go into boards feeling confident, because you're already going to walk in not confident. And then I knew that I did good on both of my C exams. So that was just one thing I didn't have to worry about. So study for your C's. I know it does. I see the argument like, well, I just want to see where I'm at, but it's just not worth it in the end.
But are you not going to study for boards? Because you are. Yeah. So why don't you study for your C?
For the C did help me study for boards. And maybe that is why I felt so confident to take it before graduation, is because I had studied so dang hard for the C's.
A daily dose of inspiration from a CRNA School Prep Academy student. I have been waiting to write this post for a few years now, 3 to be exact. I finally got accepted to CRNA school. Thank you so much to CSBA for everything. I have been a member for 3 years and went to 2 conferences, which was super helpful. I also did 2 mock interviews. I then did the 5-day interview boot camp 3 separate times as well. Here's my story. This has been a lifelong dream of mine since I was 13 years old. My GPA was a 3.2, so not the best, and I refused to take the GRE because I don't feel standardized tests should be used to determine the quality level of a student. I worked at a busy level 1 trauma center for 6 years and was a part of every committee possible. I also had my CCRN, my TNCC. I was charge nurse and a preceptor. I took grad level biochemistry course from Oregon State as well. I applied to over 7 different schools and only got 2 interviews. Rejection was not fun over and over again, and after a failed interview in January, I almost gave up. CSBA helped me so much and gave me the motivation to keep pursuing my dreams. Moral of the story, do not give up. I just love this story so very much. So dear future CRNA, you know who you are. Congratulations. I'm so incredibly proud of you. If you're not already subscribed to our free Future CRNA newsletter, be sure to do so now. Pause this episode and click the link in the show notes or comments below. Cheers to your future. Now back to the show.
Yeah, for sure. Good for you. I love that advice. And yeah, I just think that's not a good mindset to have, because again, you're not going to wing boards. So why would you wing the C? You want confidence, like you said, that you did well. And it's funny that you said 2 weeks. So that feels more, I studied for 2 weeks, although mine was like 2 weeks after graduation, I took it. I didn't study, although my last day of CRNA school, I had a 24-hour clinical. So it was literally impossible. Yeah, it was brutal. I was like, oh, no one wanted to end at their children's rotation because that's where you do the call and the 24-hour shifts. And of course I got selected. I was like, dang it. Yes. But it's all good. Survived. But yeah, I remember coming out of that parking garage in the morning and seeing the sunrise and being like, I'm done. It was cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool to see the sunrise on my last day of clinical. And I was exhausted. I was like, I'm going to go pass out, but it was a good feeling. And, as far as taking breaks or to grind it out, do all day, that is very personal. I personally liked chunks of 4 hours and then I would go to the gym, another 4 hours. And then I maybe again, do like some activity around the house, because like for me, what I noticed when I study for that long is I tend to get like fatigued to the point where I don't think I'm being constructive, meaning like my brain gets fatigued and I don't think I'm absorbing anything anymore, at least not in a concrete way. So I needed like every 4 hours, I had to take at least a 20-30 minute break.
And I think now that you mention it, I did do the Pomodoro method.
Oh, cool.
So I don't know, for people who haven't heard about that, it's basically you're time blocking your time. So I would set a 25-minute timer and I would do a 5-minute break, 25-minute study, 5-minute break. And then in the middle of the day, I would do like a half-hour lunch, whatever. But it is important to acknowledge, like what Jenny said, is that if you feel like because there will be a time where you feel like you're forgetting the easy stuff. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, okay, now I'm done. And that is where I think people go wrong, is that they continue to study, or because they feel like that, they add on another week of study and then they go and they fail boards. I'm not saying that's going to happen to you, but I know several people that happened to, where because they had studied so much, they had reserved maybe a month off after graduation. And then they started to feel like, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting the easy stuff. I used to know that. And then they would panic and then they would keep studying even more instead of I'm like, you need to give yourself a day off. You have to do no study for an entire day. You've been going for a month straight. You've been going for 3 weeks straight. Right. And they wouldn't do it. And then they would go to boards and then they didn't pass. And so it is really important, like you said, to recognize when you are starting to feel that way, take the entire day off the next day, go out to lunch, even though you don't want to, go hang out with friends, even just watch a movie inside, but you have to change your brain and the way that it's thinking to mix it up, or you will start to forget like the easy stuff that you used to know, for sure.
Mm-hmm. I love that. And one of the things I remember doing too, that I felt weird doing it, because almost everyone I know would grind out and stay up late till the night before to study. But like, I knew for a fact that I would do better on a good night's sleep. Sleep with all the anxiety of boards is not that, and that in itself is going to be hard. But I remember it was like probably 6 p.m. the night before boards. And I'm thinking I should probably go for another few hours. I took a core concepts quiz, which was incredibly hard. Like you said, I was studying Prodigy. Apex wasn't around back then, or at least it was like in its infancy. So we were doing Prodigy, which I liked Prodigy. I had a good. I mean, I thought I had it memorized though, because I had been using it during the entire program. So much so that I'm like, I don't know if I know this or I'm just memorizing it. So I did buy other things like the, back then it was Valley, and I did core concepts, and the core concepts kicked my behind. Like it was just like brutal. Right. And I was in tears, and I'm like, I'm going to fail. And then like, I finally got, cause I was like taking it, I was like beating my confidence every question. Cause I was like, wow. And then I got to the end of the results, and I think I scored like a 75 or 76%. And I was like crushed. I was like, oh, that's like a C, it's failing. And then I saw the overall average, and I was like 90 something percentile.
Oh, that's great. Yeah.
So I was like, well then shoot. So then I was like, that was helpful. And then I studied like some really last minute, like, they were Valley, but they were kind of like these, they called them, like our program called them golden pearls. And like, they were like really key concepts, like how to put out an OR fire and the fire triangle and all that stuff. And no joke, I had several questions on those key concepts, but I called my program director the night before, and I was like, I'm hoping, I feel like I'm ready, but I want to just stop. I'm done. I'm burnt out. I can't do anymore. I need to just stop. But I'm nervous. And then, I talked to him, and don't be afraid to rely on your program director for that extra piece of confidence the night before or the week before, or whenever it is. They are rooting you on, like they want you to succeed. Right. So that was really helpful to talk to him too, and kind of get that extra little like pep talk, like, come on, you can do this. This is why I know you're gonna be successful. This is your C score. That's your core concept score. Like you've done all these things, like you're going to be okay. And so that was really nice, knowing that he was backing my decision and taking it. So things like that. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say, now that you mentioned Valley, I can't believe I forgot, but that was like my favorite. Now that you mentioned it, I think I just blacked out all of boards. So I loved the Valley sweatbook, was amazing. Yes. Mm-hmm. So I would say I probably split it like in thirds. So it was Apex, Prodigy, and then Valley. And so I read the entire sweatbook, and they have like their practice questions on there. And yeah, you'll definitely see some duplicates in there for sure.
Yeah, I love that.
Very helpful.
Any resource that, you don't have to buy all of them, but I do like the suggestion of at least trying one other method, because you don't know if you're going to like it better until you at least try it, kind of thing. Right. So don't be afraid to invest and to try some out. I don't know if any of them offer free trials, but I don't know. It's never going to hurt. A lot of times what I would do too, like when I would cross cover material, like you said, certain material in Valley that was maybe OB, right, would be different than when Prodigy by a little bit, just in the way they present it. Yep. So it was helpful to see two different presentations of the same concepts.
Yeah. So I think that's what I ended up doing near the end when I had those couple pieces of paper that I combined everything in, is I would go through that Valley book and then Apex. And it is hard at the end, because you do realize that there are still differences in resources, which gets frustrating near the end. But I highly recommend Valley. I think if your school provides Apex for you, and if you are looking for supplemental information, I would get the Valley sweatbook over anything for sure. Mm-hmm.
All right, great. I love that. And Valley also offers like an in-day, I don't know if they still do, but they offer like an in-day event where you can go kind of have like a CRNA board.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they still do.
Yeah. So that's another option too. And then you get the book with that. But I thought that was really, and going with your classmates, it was fun. We might have had too much Christmas ale, because we went around that time of year, and I was like, I don't remember. Do I remember anything? But it was fun. It was good. During the day we didn't drink. It was just at night. All right. So let's get into, we talked about board prep. And we talked about how much time lapsed between graduate. Oh no, we didn't talk about that. We talked about that you took it the day before you graduate, which is insane, but that's really cool that you had 2 weeks prior to that. I do think 2 weeks, like at least our program had a rule that 2 weeks was kind of like the minimum that they wanted you to prepare.
Yeah.
I do know people who have done less than that, and it just depends on you though. And one last thing on this topic, and it's just because you know what you've done throughout the program. And at least our program, it was like the second week, it felt like they're like, by board prep. We're like, what? We just started yesterday. It's like,
right.
Yeah, you got to start prepping for boards today, 2 years from now. And so that was kind of, they mapped out exactly what you should be doing all throughout your time. And some students did it, right? Because it wasn't required to graduate. There wasn't like, no one's holding your hand and making sure you're doing the assignments, but our program would say you should do X, Y, and Z amount of Prodigy every single week throughout the duration of your program. That's why when I got to the end, I had done it a couple times all the way through. It was insane. That's why I was like, I'm pretty sure I have this memorized. So I knew I was ready because I had already done a full board prep more than once. Not everyone did that. And the ones who didn't follow that direction or that guidance were the ones, in my opinion, who actually struggled more, because now they're cramming, and cramming's not effective. Your long-term memory needs time, like years, sometimes. But when you're forgetting old concepts from the beginning of the program and you're not trying to pick it back up till the very end, like it's going to be way harder to have that recall because it's not going to be reinforced throughout the duration. Something to keep in mind. But anyway, so let's talk about the time that lapsed between graduation and your first day as a CRNA. Was it the next day after graduation?
I know, right? No, I had to fit in some celebration there somehow. So, but it was actually really quick. Shocker. I don't like to sit down, I guess.
No break.
So right. Yeah. I don't know how to just not do anything. So it was about 2.5 weeks after I graduated. Yeah. Shocker again. So I was able to get credentialed really quickly through this company. It's not the company that I'm working with full time. It's just a company. I don't know how to put it. They just credential people really quickly, I guess. So it was for a pain center. So a lot of these outpatient centers, just for people to keep in mind, you do get credentialed a lot quicker than, say, a hospital. Hospitals, I feel like, maybe this is just an Arizona thing, but I feel like 3 months is pretty normal to get credentialed in a hospital. Yes. So while I was waiting, I did find this company that was able to credential me that quickly. And so I started working at a pain center. 2.5 weeks after. Wow.
That's impressive. And I would never think to look at a pain center for fast credentialing. So
there you go.
Because I graduated in August, and my first day of work was like mid-October, and I took my boards 2 weeks after graduation. So I did have a decent amount of time, and that was like the starving period, right? Where I'm like, I got a credit card, I can rack it up, and I can't wait for my first paycheck. It's like,
right, exactly.
Yeah. So that's good to know. But yeah, I think the biggest takeaway with this is, if you are going to be going to a big hospital who's credentialing, and they'll usually tell you, they're pretty upfront in the beginning, like this could take up to 3 months. And I've been credentialed now for like a locum position, and that equally was like torture. So it just, normally the process takes forever. And, but just anticipate that financially, I guess, is my piece of advice, because I know, like, for me, I had run dry. All of our funds were gone, and we didn't have, it was an incredibly stressful period of time, because I just remember thinking, like, we just got to pay the bills for another month. And, so I wish I had planned for that better. But you live and you learn. So just want to share that advice now. If you can save a little bit of a nest egg, not that you have a nest egg, but if you can save anything just to make sure you can pay your minimum bills during that waiting period, or ask your parents to move in with them or support you, whatever it ends up being, you may need it. Okay. So
there's a lot of costs that come up, especially if you're doing 1099, setting up your LLC, getting a CPA, like there's a lot of extra costs near graduation that just, plan ahead for sure.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah, and even like hospitals usually have application fees that are like over $100 sometimes. And you're like,
oh, geez.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a great advice too. There's other expenses. Yeah. All right. So what was your first day like as an official CRNA? Do you remember like walking into the OR feeling like, ooh, did it feel different?
So the first day went great. So it was at that pain center.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't in an OR. It was in a small pain center. It was a small little room. And I had, it wasn't with the company that I had clinical with. This was a new company. They didn't know me. I didn't know them. So I had no really idea what I was walking into. I didn't know if there was going to be 3 rooms where there's going to be other CRNAs or MDs there. I had no idea. So, and that's something to be said for for people who are still deciding whether or not you want to be independent or work in a supervised ACT, whatever kind of care team model you want to work in, just make that decision before, you signed up for jobs like this, because I was the only independent CRNA there. There was no other anesthesia there. There was just me. There was no MDA there.
I can't believe that's an insane story. First day.
it was just me. But I knew that was a slight possibility going in there. I didn't know for sure. I was hoping maybe there would be backup, but there was not. So just, I guess I could have asked, but I was comfortable enough, I guess, to show up on that first day and just go for it. So
gotcha. What did you do on that first day? Was it like just like sedation for procedures?
Yep. Okay. So sedation for, like epidurals, RFAs, medial branch blocks, all of those pain procedures. Yeah. So basically all it is, it's for, and I know not everybody gets to experience this in school. I actually only had one day in clinical of doing pain before doing this. So, hey. Yeah, a lot of people don't. So basically all you're doing is the patient is prone, but there's no airway. It's just them breathing on their own. So that's the fun part, is that they are prone with no airway, and you have to give propofol for most parts, unless it's a cervical epidural, in which you just give fentanyl and Versed, just due to the location of that injection. So it was fine. I did have a couple of patients that didn't handle the propofol well. I don't think it was anything that I did. Just, everyone reacts to sedation differently, and it's hard to find that fine line of, maintaining an airway when you don't have one, and pushing propofol where it's safe enough for the doctor to inject in a very sensitive location. So
right. And then, oh gosh, yeah, the needle's in your back, and don't you move, but you have
to keep breathing. Yeah.
Right. Like, those are hard cases. So
yeah,
kudos to you, man. That takes guts. I mean, holy moly, a way to start your CRNA career. That's awesome.
It ended up being a really good day. Lots of laughs were had. I mean, it's just sometimes pain is just like that, where it's just, they're kind of wiggling, but you can't push anymore. And that's just the nature of pain, I think. So it worked out really well. I still do pain, so it didn't scare me.
There you go. I was going to ask that, but what I love about this, I think, and I'm kind of reflecting on it, like, this just goes to show that I just like that mindset of just putting yourself in a situation. I'm not saying do things unsafe, so don't take it that way. I'm not saying that, but I'm saying, don't be afraid to try new things. Don't be afraid to do something you've never done before. I think that's where you get the most growth. And like you said, now you still continue to do that. Yes, it was scary, it was challenging, but that made you better for it. And throughout your entire career as a CRNA, like, if you exercise that muscle of like, because trust me, you guys, sometimes you'll work at a place where they'll ask you, do you feel comfortable in here? I mean, obviously, if you need reinforcements, get reinforcements, but don't ever say no just because you don't want to put yourself in a situation of growth. I did work with people like that. I worked with people who like never won. Gosh forbid they ever did a pediatric case. Gosh forbid they ever did anything that they didn't feel comfortable doing. It's like, you will only get comfortable doing that if you do it.
Right. And I think I think I truly have my school to thank for that. And that all of our clinical rotations, some of them were out of state. They were not so every 3 months, it was something that was completely unfamiliar. And most of them were CRNA independent. And so I think just, after I graduated, I was comfortable being thrown in with, what anesthesia I didn't need to ask, well, what anesthesia machine do you have? It didn't matter because I knew how to use all of them. What kind of gases, with this, with that, how do you store your medications? Where's your emergency equipment? Oh, it's this little janky thing or whatever. I'm comfortable with it. it doesn't matter. So you get used to, your drugs are in this little toolbox. Your drugs are in this Fixis. It's different everywhere. Exactly. So I think after having so many different rotations that were unique, some of them more rural, some of them were very established. I felt comfortable, that first day I was like, what, I'm not nervous. I've done this before with all my other rotations. So I walked in, okay, where do you keep your drugs? Where's your emergency equipment? Who are my resources? Me. Oh, okay, great. Let's go.
Yeah. Awesome. No, I love that mentality. And, we get students, for those of you, Marissa went to school in Arizona, but I'm in Ohio, and we get students from Arizona, and I always, especially when they come in the winter, I'm like, sorry, because, most of them have never been through a snowstorm before. I'm like, here you go. Just tap the brakes. You don't hit them, you tap them. But that being said, it is not only is it flying out to a completely new state, but being put in different clinical settings forces you every time to know, kind of like when you travel nurse, you kind of have to quickly adjust to your environment and quickly know what are the most important things I need to know to do my job and to be safe. And so I think almost in a way that you were almost in a good position to do a role like that right out of school, because CRNAs can get comfortable. They can get very comfortable. They've been somewhere for 10 years. And I'm speaking for myself too. And that the more comfortable you get, the harder it is to break that and challenge yourself. I strive to do it. It's not easy. Going from like, again, doing adult open heart, and I did occasional peds and some OB, but then going to a pediatric hospital and then an orthopedic center that just did regional block that I hadn't done since school. All of those things were incredibly hard and forced and challenged me to like relearn again. But it's so rewarding when you do that with your career, because it really allows you to like utilize it to its fullest, which is why you went into anesthesia, because it's fun and you get to do a lot of different things. So I love that. I think that's a great story. And it also makes me laugh, because like not too many people probably tell me that, but I think that's awesome.
Yeah. The OR was scary. Like I'll touch quickly on that because I think that'll probably most people's first experiences like on their own. But the OR is very, it was intimidating the first couple of weeks being, okay, I'm the only one in that OR. Okay. Like, let me make sure I do have like my extra blade and my tube, which, you always do in school, but you really do have your safety net there the entire time. And then once you're on your own, you're really like, you're triple checking everything. You're like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, let me actually, check my drawers. I can't tell my preceptor like, hey, can you go grab phenylephrine? There's no more syringes in here. Just little stuff like that, where you're just like, oh yeah, I never really checked, the stock of the meds as much, because it was just easy for me to go run out and go to the other room to get one. So stuff like that. Oh, I'm out of glyco. Okay, great. Well, so just like little stuff like that you realize after you graduate, you're like, okay, like I really need to do a thorough checkout in my room before I get started, because it's just me.
Yes.
So.
And don't get too reliant on techs. You trust me, you will get burned. Everyone will get burned. And not like, it's not intentional burning. It's not like they do it intentionally, but they're human, and occasionally don't hook up your suction, or they hook it up and don't put the Yankar on. You're like, I need it. And you're like, oh, I don't have like,
dang it.
Yeah. I mean, and it just happens. Or you'll come in an OR and I've had like gas left on. I'm like, well, I'm sure that's not great for the environment. I mean, just you'll see all kinds of stuff. So not getting to like, always doing your own check is essentially what you're saying, which I love.
Yeah, for sure.
What are some unexpected challenges that you faced or you have faced being on your own as a CRNA?
I think kind of just what we talked about already. Definitely, that you are your own support person for the most part. This hospital that I recently switched over to, there's not really, we don't have a float. It's just the CRNAs are in their separate rooms. So you really do have to think ahead and be like, okay, if I have an airway emergency, I need to be able to, does my nurse know where the glide scope is? Do they know where the LMAs are in the drawer? Do I have one pulled out already so they can just grab it, because they don't know that? So it's just, it is very independent. And if I called overhead, everyone might be in a room. There might not be anyone to come in and run in and help me out. So I think that is, it's scary, unexpected, other than like little things like when you're in school, pay attention to how your preceptor is doing PACU orders. We never could order them as students, or if we did, it was like under our preceptor. But just, think ahead of like, oh, maybe I shouldn't order this medication for this comorbidity. Just little stuff like that, which you do know about, but when it's you and you're the one ordering, there's a lot of more weight to it than when you're just ordering it under your preceptors. So just, try your best to think ahead. Like, okay, if I was ordering this under my name and something happened, like I'm the one in trouble. So just, understand PACU orders. I think that was something else that I didn't really think about too often, I guess, because that's like the least of your worries.
Right. Yeah, usually. Yeah. And I guess for those of you listening, I mean, if you have a seasoned PACU nurse too, some of those PACU nurses are so knowledgeable because they've been around for so long. They will help you. Right. So, and then obviously sometimes I even ask the surgeon too. Like I've often referred to like what the surgeon typically does for certain things too. So, and we do have limited resources. And I worked at a place where, again, you were, the only one in the operating room. You didn't have anyone come and help you induce or things like that. You rely very heavily on your OR nurse to really help you. And sometimes you have to demand their attention and like, don't be ashamed to do that. Say, I need your full attention. Please come over to the bedside. or they're the ones getting things for you. There's so many times where like, I remember one time I had a laryngospasm and like, for example, having sucks drawn up, not just in a vial, but drawn up. But, you know, I had it drawn up, but I had to say, grab that syringe. Cause I'm like, grab succinylcholine. What? Grab that syringe right there. That's labeled with a red label. Grab it, push 1 cc, 1 ml. Don't say 20 milligrams. Well, how much is 20 milligrams? I have no idea. They don't know.
Exactly.
Like, nurses know in cc. So almost I've kind of learned now through just experience too, that usually when you're giving direction to someone who doesn't know a drug very well, you have to be very specific in what you need. Not
how to do that.
Yeah, they're not going to convert mics to milligrams. Like they're going to be like, what? Like, you know, so making sure you understand who you're giving direction to and being very specific about what you need them to do for you. I like my cath lab nurses, shout out to them. Like, you guys can hold a freaking airway, because a lot of those attendings, they have propofol sedation privileges and they push too much and you don't have anesthesia involved. And so those cath lab nurses knew how to hold an airway. So I knew that. And there's several times where, you know, you're waking up, and back when I worked, the cath lab was like kind of in BFE, which it was just far away from the main OR. So even if you had an emergency or something going wrong, you're waiting. I mean, even if someone ran over there, it would take a few minutes, and a few minutes when you're like struggling, it feels like a lifetime. But I mean, I would often, if I had to, I know that they could at least hold my airway while I got drugs drawn up for whatever else I needed. Right. So kind of understanding what the skill set is of your OR staff. My PAs, for sure. Shout out to my PAs. They can do A-lines, IVs. I mean, even the surgeons do my A-line. Why? I mean, like if you had an something emergent happen and you need your all hands on deck for their airway, but you need an A-line because they're crashing, assign it to someone in the room. If you don't have anyone else there that anesthesia-wise to help you, you get that PA, you get that attending or the surgeon to start working on it. I've always been, especially if they're a vascular surgeon, they're the best. I mean, they're going to be able to get that A-line. I mean, so, and same with like ENTs. Oh my gosh. I mean, airway issues. Well, you got an ENT surgeon. So, that's always, just think about who's in the room. I guess it's my big piece of advice. Think of who you're with that day and what are their strengths and what areas could you maybe need more direct and when you speak to them.
And I think knowing how to set the standard of how you're going to practice. And what I mean by that is, you know, how you like to position your patients. Because if you start going along with the room as you're new, the OR staff are going to know that, oh, she's going to do whatever I ask her to do. I want to position the patient down here when they have those foam pads and you can't move them. And so me right off the bat, I don't do that. I don't intubate my patients halfway down the bed. I don't think it's safe. I want the head right up against my stomach. So in case anything happened, because if anything happened to that patient, well, what happened? Well, she couldn't get the airway. The patient was halfway down the bed. Well, that's not safe practice. No, it's not. Okay, now I just lost my job. So there are certain things that's like, nope, I'm not okay with that. The patient's going to be up here. And so now as people start to work with me, they're going to not ask me that anymore. They're going to be like, nope, Marissa likes her patients at the head of the bed, or she likes me right there to hand me the tube or whatever, just little things. So I think as long as, if you're a new grad, stick to what you're comfortable with, because it's going to be safer for everybody. Don't kind of flow with what the OR is pushing you to do. Like, okay, if they're trying to rush you, just be like, nope, I want to wait this long to do such and such, whatever. I think if you set that standard early, they're going to know how you practice. They're going to know what you're going to tolerate and what you won't. And that's going to make a more comfortable environment for you.
100%. And what I've always found too is, and you guys, I try to always lead with this mindset because it helps me be very kind and courteous to everyone I interact with, because that goes a long way in the operating room, trust me. But when the staff is doing something that you were like, this is clearly not safe, why would you ask me to do that? Nicely say, no, I'd prefer them up here, and here's why. Like, and I just tell them, and then they're like, oh, I didn't think about that, because they're thinking about their efficiency, right? They're going to have the toe task by the surgeon. They want to speed up their process. So if they're already down to the end of the bed where they want them to put their knee up in stirrups, cool. You save them 5 minutes instead of having to boost them down there. So that's what they're thinking about. They're not thinking about what if you lose that airway, because that's not their role. And so you have to think through that for them. And again, that's all about educating your staff. Some staff are very knowledgeable on that aspect. Some are not. Some will just try to push the limits, right? Because they just will. So it's just a matter of, like Marissa said, setting that boundary and letting them know who they're working with. And the other thing that's also confusing for the staff in their regard is every CRNA is different, you know?
Yes.
And some CRNAs will be okay with that. And they'll be like, yeah, let's just do it. I don't know. That's fine. Like, I mean, but you know what your comfort level is and your skill set is, and what you would like. What I always do when I make decisions, I think, well, what would happen if the worst case scenario unfolded? What would I do? And if I can think through a way that I know I can safely manage that in a very efficient manner, cool. But if I think, well, this is probably pushing the limits, you might delay it, it could cause them to desat a little bit longer, whatever it is. No, let's just not do it. Here's why. Boom, done. And at the end of the day, no matter who you're dealing with, whether that's the surgeon himself, it's your call. Because I've looked at a surgeon and said, we need to cancel this case, like in the middle, like after induction, and it was canceled. And that is the power that really, I'm not saying you have, but obviously I didn't just say you didn't cancel this case and not give them a reason. I explained thoroughly in a very passionate, disturbed, concerned way about why this needs to be canceled. I equally had a surgeon one time, they were pounding a rod in someone's back and they practically went asystolic, like, I don't know, heart rate of like 10, of course, so I'm treating it, right? But we need a heart rate to circulate that unless I'm going to jump on their chest and they're prone. So I tell the surgeon to stop, right? And they're like, I can't stop right now. And I'm like, well, if you want them to live, you will. They don't have a heart rate and my atropine is not going to circulate. Look at like, I have no heart rate. I can start chest compressions. You want me to start chest compressions? And then they were like, oh, okay, you have my attention. And then they came up afterwards, like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, it's okay. You just didn't know what was going on. And I had to thoroughly explain, like, no, I can't, you have to stop because I can't circulate this medication with no heartbeat. So It's like one of those things where it might seem like common sense, but when they're like focused on what they're doing, their surgery, they may not think about the heartbeat. So, airway, breathing, circulation, that's our job. So no, I love all these pearls of wisdom. I love it. This is great. What would you say you enjoy the most about being on your own as a CRNA?
Oh gosh, I think the first thing that comes to mind since it's so fresh is not being in CRNA school. I think it's just I think freedom. You learn so much from your preceptors, but it is really nice. And even if you're with the nicest preceptor on earth, you always feel like you're being judged, even if you're not. And so it is really nice to finally just do your own thing and not be like, oh, I wonder if, if they thought I did okay, like that looked pretty good. I wonder if they saw that. Oh, man, I did something stupid. Dang it. Like, I don't normally do that, but they saw, I think just that self-talk being gone is really nice.
Yes.
And not having to do anything after the hospital. You're just home, and it does get better, guys. If you're in school, it really does. It's so worth it. I have some free time now. I'm able to see friends again. I'm able to watch TV again. Like, it really is. It's a great career. The hospital I work with is awesome. The CRNAs I work with is awesome. So it's a really exciting time.
Yeah, no, that's great. I love that advice. And you're right. It is learning when you're a CRNA versus learning when you're in school. It's different. The scrutiny that you feel like you're under, that pressure is lifted. But I will say, I remember, I always really remember this. Like, I started, the OB wasn't a big deal, but I do remember when I started my OB rotation, like as an actual CRNA, I did have to call for reinforcements quite a bit in the beginning, and just once you learn how to troubleshoot OB, it becomes no big deal. But the troubleshooting, it takes experience. It takes a hands-on experience to really learn how to troubleshoot your own epidurals or spinals. And spinals were never an issue because I had plenty of those in school, but not so many epidurals. But that being said, when I started my open heart team, I was with a CRNA for, I don't know, maybe a couple of weeks. And this particular CRNA, God love her, she's amazing. She's like a rock star, but she was incredibly intimidating, like just scary. Like I was never with her as a student. I mean, I didn't rotate there, but she was intense. Like, I remember being like, wow, I feel like I got slapped back to school again. She was like asking me, Joan, with all these questions. And I'm like, oh, shit. Like it was like kind of a reminder of like, I'm so glad that I don't have to deal with this every day. The way you did in school. There is a brighter side. There is a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow. Just keep climbing, you will get there. But I love this. And I guess just to kind of wrap this up, is there any kind of advice that you would give a student who is about to graduate?
I think definitely, staying focused near the end on boards. I think it's really hard, but I think if you put in those really strong couple of weeks after graduation, before graduation, whenever you have time to do that, don't take boards unless you feel ready, obviously. But when you do, don't second guess yourself. Only you know when you're ready. Don't compare yourself to anybody else when they're taking it. If you need to come off social media so you can avoid those, I passed boards posts, like do that. Only you know when you are ready. I knew 110% that I was ready to take boards. And if you don't feel like that, then maybe you aren't ready. So just remember that. Use those last couple of months to really feel like you're practicing independent, even if you're not working for an independent practice, like you still are going to be on your own. So, you know, CRNAs are independent regardless of what model you work under. So just, you know, tell yourself, what would I do if so-and-so wasn't in here? Like how would I have treated that? You know, how did I just stock my room? Everything. So just practice like you are completely independent the last couple of months, make yourself uncomfortable. Still continue to ask, you know, questions that you may feel like are stupid. I feel like near the end, when I would have questions, I almost sometimes felt myself not wanting to ask them because it's like, well, I should know this by now. You're about to graduate in 2 months. They keep saying I'm about to graduate in 2 months. I don't want to look stupid, especially because I knew that they were my employers at the time. They had already hired me. But don't be scared to ask those questions because they are going to come back and then you're not going to have anyone to ask when you're in the room by yourself. I mean, you will, but you know, a last minute text to somebody that, you know, would have been nice if you just knew it already. So you know, don't be scared to still be a student up until that point, but try your best to be independent and, you know, good luck. It's fun. It goes by really quickly.
Yeah. You know, it's really great advice. I love that. And, I'll add, social can just be a distraction on top of the fact that you might start facing more doubt. And I think, you know, as far as feeling 100% ready, kind of what I got to is even if I'm not 100%, I will never be more ready than I am at this moment. It was one of those exceptions where I'm going to go in this imperfectly, but I know I can do enough to pass. It was like, okay, I might not feel like a complete rock star, but I feel like I can at least pass this test. And that's all you need.
Impossible to know. Right. It's impossible to know everything. And that's what I think a lot of people who had to retake it that I had spoken with is like, well, I don't know everything. It's you're not going to know everything. If you did, it would take you a few years, no work, no school. You're just
right. No thanks.
It's literally impossible. So just as long as you know the big concepts, the one that they keep reinforcing, you should be okay. But yeah, just know that you're not going to go into it. Yeah. When I mean 110%, I meant more mentally.
Yes.
Not that I had every bit of information.
Yes. So I want to make sure people listening were like, whoa,
absolutely. Yeah. No, you will not know everything. I did not know everything, nor did I care to know everything. Yes. I just knew that I knew enough. 110%.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And my other piece of recommendation too is don't take a vacation before boards. That is one of the things I wanted to point out. I know more people than not who, if that is the case, they tend not to pass. And it's because you've already mentally checked out and it's like you're not taking it seriously. Like
that sounds horrible. I'd be just thinking about boards the whole time. Do it after. That's what I did.
Yeah. But this happens like more than you would think. Like I've known it a handful of times. I'm like, really? But they always regret it, especially if they don't pass boards. Save your vacation for afterwards. And then, you know, I love how Marissa, don't be afraid to ask questions, you know, even after school though, you guys. Yes. My gosh, questions. There's no such thing as a stupid question. Even if you've been practicing for 25 freaking years, if you have any kind of doubt, you got to trust that gut. And one of the things that you learn really strongly as a CRNA is to trust that gut instinct that maybe something's not right. And I've never regretted having a second opinion, meaning come to the bedside, lay some eyes on this person, here are my thoughts, blah, 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 blah. Do you agree, disagree, why? And not only that, but it really helps you learn and grow as a provider to understand someone else's rationale when you're thinking through something that could be more complex. Oh my God. I mean, I've only regretted when I haven't done it. Let's just put it that way. Like that, because usually I'm like, dang it, I should have, you know what I mean? Because then something happens and you're like, I knew it, but I didn't do anything. Because I just thought, well, this is on my mind or I'm not right or whatever. So I like, every time I think like, I just always, it's hard. It's not easy to make that decision of whether you should bring it up or get second set of eyes. But I will just tell you right now that I've never regretted asking for a second opinion on something that I'm questioning. I was like, are they going to fly with extubation? Here's why I think they might not fly. Maybe I should ask someone else if they agree before I just yank the tube and now I have to re-intubate this person. Or I mean, what if it's a carotid? I mean, what if you burst the stitches because now they're coughing or, I mean, whatever it is, just be careful and never be afraid to use your resources, even if it's just an app to confirm a dose. I mean, slow down. Yeah. Slow down. I don't care if they're dying, slow down and confirm the dose. Like the medical mistake will kill them too. Like that's why I always think, I always think like, okay, yeah, they're coding. Okay. They could die, but if I equally push too much or whatever, they could also die. So slow down, check your dose, understand what you're doing and what you're getting ready to push and give. Communication is huge. Communication, the whole room, everyone has to know exactly what you're thinking. Shout it out. loud and proud, deep, solid mama bear voice, like yell it so people know, to capture their attention, because they're busy doing other things. They will ignore you if you're not being authoritative. You have to be like, I need you right now. Come jump on this chest. I'm doing this. Like, you have to just start owning the room and being demanding, which can be kind of fun, actually. But just as a new grad, CRNA is intimidating. You guys, I'm pretty meek and mild, I would say, as a person. Like, I actually was told when I was a student that I don't have a big enough backbone to be a CRNA as a student. Yeah, that was really hurtful. But what I will say is I can be kind. I treat everyone with kindness and respect. That's like big for me, kindness, respect. But I will make sure that if I need something for my patient, especially, or even for myself, you'll see me flip my switch pretty quickly and be demanding and very authoritative. But of course, I'm going to be kind and nice to everyone. But it's one of those things where if you're meek and mild, you have it in you. I know you do. You wouldn't be going into this if you didn't. Don't ever doubt that. But Marissa, thank you so much for sharing. This was a really great episode, and I appreciate you so much.
Yes, I'm so excited. Thank you.
Marissa, why don't you go ahead and tell everyone where they can find you so they can make sure they follow you on all the things.
Okay. All right. So I'm Sassy Anesthesia on Instagram and TikTok, and my website is sassyanesthesia.com.
She is sassy. Thank you so very much. It was a pleasure.
Hey, future CRNA, as always, I appreciate you and your loyalty. Thank you so very much for tuning in this week. I'd love to hear from you, so screenshot this episode and share it to your IG stories with your biggest takeaway. Don't forget to tag me at CRNA School Prep Academy so I can personally thank you. Be sure to head over to CRNASchoolPrepAcademy.com to check out our blog and gather free resources to help you along your CRNA journey. Stay strong, and I'll see you next week.